There is a peculiar thing that happens to the human mind when it grows up in a world that does not feel safe. And the strange part is that we rarely call it intelligence, even though that is exactly what it is. Because what we call overthinking is often not excess thought at all, but excess vigilance. A mind that learned very early that danger does not announce itself clearly, that love can disappear suddenly, that rules change without warning, that adults may be present physically, but absent emotionally. And so the mind does what any intelligent system would do under those conditions. It scans, it anticipates, it rehearses, it imagines every possible outcome before it happens, not because it enjoys anxiety, but because prediction feels safer than surprise. And this is why so many people who grew up with instability, inconsistency, emotional neglect, or chronic stress develop minds that never quite turn off, because the nervous system learned that rest is risky, that stillness invites pain, and that awareness must be constant to survive. And when such a mind enters adulthood, we give it names like ADHD, anxiety disorder, oppositional defiance, conduct problems, emotional dysregulation, or later, personality styles that look dramatic, volatile, avoidant, rigid, or dependent. But beneath all those labels is the same simple story. A nervous system that never learned it was safe to relax into trust. You see, when a child grows up with repeated adverse experiences, whether obvious trauma like abuse and chaos, or quieter wounds like emotional unavailability, chronic distraction, inconsistent presence, or being raised by overwhelmed caregivers, the brain does not say, "This is unfair." It says, "This is the environment." And then it adapts, and adaptation is not gentle, it is efficient. And one of the most efficient survival strategies the brain has is to think ahead, to stay alert, to fill silence with analysis, to prepare arguments, to imagine threats before they arrive. And when this happens early and often, thinking itself becomes a form of armor, a way of staying in control in a world that felt unpredictable. And so what looks like overthinking is often the echo of a childhood where thinking was safer than feeling, and control was safer than connection. Now here is where it becomes especially interesting, because this same survival intelligence can go in two very different directions, almost like water flowing downhill, depending on temperament, environment, and opportunity. Because for some people, this constant mental activity spills outward, becoming talkativeness, emotional intensity, storytelling, persuasion, charm, confrontation, drama, and even manipulation. Not because they are bad people, but because expression becomes regulation, and speaking becomes a way to keep the nervous system from collapsing inward. And these individuals often grow into what psychology later calls cluster B personalities. People who feel deeply, react quickly, attach intensely, and fear abandonment profoundly, because their overthinking brain learned that connection must be maintained actively, constantly, or it will disappear. And so they talk, they perform, they provoke, they test, they escalate, not because they want chaos, but because silence feels like danger and distance feels like death. For others, the same overthinking mind turns inward instead, because expression did not feel safe, or was punished, ignored, or ridiculed. And so the nervous system learned a different lesson. Disappear to survive. Don't need too much. Don't feel too much. Don't ask too much. And here overthinking becomes internalized, looping quietly behind a calm or compliant exterior, turning into worry, rumination, perfectionism, avoidance, dependency, rigidity, or emotional numbing. And these individuals often grow into what psychology later calls cluster C personalities. Not because they are weak, but because safety was found in control, predictability, and restraint, and the mind learned to lock everything down tightly so nothing could leak out and invite rejection. What both paths have in common is not pathology, but adaptation, because the brain did not malfunction. It learned, and it learned from an environment that could not reliably provide emotional attunement, consistent presence, or a felt sense of being held in another's awareness. And this is where modern society quietly enters the picture, because never before in human history have so many children grown up surrounded by people who are physically present but psychologically elsewhere, distracted by work, stress, screens, devices, schedules, and survival pressures of their own. And this is not a moral accusation. It is a structural reality. Because when both parents must work long hours to survive, when children spend most of their waking lives in daycare with rotating caregivers, when emotional availability is replaced with efficiency, entertainment, or digital soothing, the child's nervous system does not protest. It adapts, and adaptation often looks like independence on the outside and hypervigilance on the inside. The mind of such a child learns very quickly that attention is scarce, that connection must be competed for or self-generated, and so thinking becomes louder, faster, more constant, because thinking fills the gaps where presence should have been, and over time, this thinking becomes so familiar that people mistake it for their personality, saying things like, "I'm just an overthinker," or "my brain never shuts up," without realizing that what they are describing is not a flaw, but a nervous system that never received enough signals of safety to downshift. And this is why overthinking is so common among people with ADHD, anxiety, oppositional behaviors, and emotional dysregulation, because these are not separate problems, they are different expressions of the same underlying issue. A nervous system stuck in survival mode. And survival mode, you see, is not dramatic. It is subtle. It hums quietly in the background, shaping how people relate, how they trust, how they attach, and how they interpret the world. Because when attachment feels unreliable, the mind compensates. And when trust is missing, control takes its place. And when connection feels fragile, the self becomes either loud to keep others close or small to avoid being hurt. And this is why mental health issues are rising not just as individual diagnoses, but as relational breakdowns. Because what we are really witnessing is not a sudden explosion of pathology, but a gradual erosion of secure attachment in a society that has optimized productivity, speed, and stimulation at the cost of presence, attunement, and slowness. Children raised on screens instead of faces, on algorithms instead of attuned responses, on entertainment instead of emotional mirroring, are not defective. They are overstimulated and underheld. And the brain, again, does what it always does. It adapts by becoming faster, sharper, more reactive, more restless, and less able to tolerate boredom, uncertainty, or emotional ambiguity. And later we wonder why adults struggle to sit with discomfort, why relationships feel fragile, why trust is thin, why intimacy feels risky, and why people either cling desperately or keep others at arm's length, when the answer has been quietly unfolding for decades in how we structure childhood itself. Now, this is not a nostalgic argument for some imagined perfect past, nor is it an attack on working parents, technology, or modern life, because guilt does not heal nervous systems. Awareness does. And the point here is not to blame individuals, but to notice patterns, because civilizations, like individuals, can enter survival mode too. And when a society becomes anxious, rushed, competitive, and disconnected, its children absorb that atmosphere long before they can name it, and they grow minds that reflect it. Minds that think too much, feel too little or too much, trust too rarely, embrace too often. And then we label those minds as disordered, forgetting that they are mirrors of the environment that shaped them. What makes this moment especially urgent is that attachment is not just about childhood, it is the foundation of trust between people. And when large numbers of individuals grow up without a deep sense of relational safety, society itself begins to fragment, because trust becomes conditional, relationships become transactional, disagreement becomes threatening, and difference becomes dangerous. And this is how mental health issues quietly scale into social crises, not because people are broken, but because the connective tissue that allows humans to feel safe with one another has thinned. And yet, there is a quiet hope embedded in all of this, because survival adaptations are not destiny. They are strategies, and strategies can change when the environment changes. And what the nervous system learned once, it can unlearn when it receives new information. And the most powerful information of all is consistent, attuned, reliable human presence. Not perfection, not constant availability, but enough safety over time for the body to realize that it no longer has to work so hard to survive. And this is why healing so often happens not through insight alone, but through relationships that are steady, regulated, and trustworthy. Where silence is allowed, emotions are held, and thinking is no longer required to earn safety. If there is a message here, it is not that we are doomed, but that we are early in recognizing the cost of disconnection. And perhaps, just perhaps, if we begin to value attachment, trust, and emotional presence as seriously as we value productivity and efficiency, if we design systems that support parents instead of exhausting them, if we treat children as nervous systems learning the world rather than problems to be managed, and if we stop confusing survival intelligence with pathology, we may still soften this trajectory before it hardens into crisis, because the mind that overthinks is not asking to be silenced. It is asking to be reassured, and the society that feels increasingly anxious is not asking for control. It is asking for connection. And when that connection returns, slowly, imperfectly, but consistently, the mind does something extraordinary. It rests. Thank you.